you done now?
Do you want to go up in front of me?
Absolutely no.
I'm sure there's no one up there.
Then you go in front.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Clue, the movie podcast where we break down the 1985 cult classic movie clip 1 minute at a time.
Wow, it's getting faster.
My name is...
Turning into Dana Carvey's George Bush impression. Sorry, go ahead. Intro.
My name is Brett Gilmore. I'm joined always by General Jeff Smith, and returning again this week... No stolen valor there, by the way, guys. It's just jokes. And returning again this week is the author of What Do You Mean, Murder? Clue and the Making of a Cult Classic, available November the 7th. John Hatch is here with us. John, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again.
You know, y'all are both looking at me wearing Boston Red Sox hats, and I don't know if I should be offended or how I should really feel about this, because, you know, your season's going, it's going this season.
Is it?
It's going. It's going. At least you're not like me, where I'm like, every game is consequential for the Astros right now. Literally every single game is consequential.
It's nice actually being here in Orange County now that you don't have to, like when you go to an Angel game, you don't really worry about victory because it's not ever going to happen. Even if they're always very good about the first couple innings doing well, but by 5 they'll lose it. And now, speaking of losing, they're losing all their players. Everybody always likes to tune in to Clue the Movie Podcast for hot sports talk,
especially our baseball.
Here's your baseball talk.
Yeah. Especially our baseball talk.
Clue fans and Fletch and Back to the Future and Major League Baseball.
By the way, speaking of Fletch, here is my
Brad is reaching back.
Signed Chevy Chase Fletch.
He has an autographed sports card of Fletch in his Laker jersey with the afro.
Yes, and it says Irwin M. Fletcher.
That's it.
He was the forward for the Lakers.
So and remind me where you got this?
I bought this on an online auction.
Yes, that's right.
I probably paid more than I should have for it. But
no such thing.
But this is what it says on the back. Cornelius Crane Chase, also known as Chevy Chase, was born October the 8th, 1943, and he is an American comedian, writer, and actor. Born into a prominent family, he had a variety of jobs before moving into comedy, and started acting with National Lampoon. He became a key cast member of the first season of Saturday Night Live, where his recurring Weekend Update segment became a staple of the show. As both a performer and a writer, he earned 3 Primetime Emmy Awards out of 5 nominations. That's Cornelius Crane Chase.
His Wikipedia entry is basically on the back of a trading card. That's cool.
Yeah, you always know it's a Wikipedia source when they say it's an American actor. Writer,
yeah, right.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
We're talking, though, about minute 48. This shows the duos searching the body house, the body manor, and trying to locate the perceived murderer who's about or around the home. There's a few things that stand out to me about this, and I'll get to them. But, Jeff, what stands out to you first? And then, John, I'll come to you.
Well, we got a lot of John Morris score going on here. We got that sweet, I think it's a harpsichord that's doing the heavy lifting there in the music. And it's funny to watch them. I have a feeling the set is a lot smaller than it looks like in the movie, because they're kind of, when Wadsworth and Mrs. White and Yvette and Green are walking upstairs, they're very close to each other. There's not a lot of room not a lot of elbow room. up there. And I have a feeling that Peacock and Plum are pretending to walk downstairs to go to the basement because they just kind of stop before it cuts. But that's basically it. We're just watching them go set up their split up in every classic mystery movie.
John, what stands out to you?
My favorite part of this, and one of my favorite parts in the whole movie, watch Colleen Camp. She's holding the matchstick that they drew the entire time, and she's
so
holding
happy.
it up like a weapon or like a talisman to ward people off. And she doesn't drop it until she and Mr. Green are walking up the stairs, and they kind of get stuck together. That's when she drops it. So the whole time she's holding it straight up, like not just
like a torch.
Yeah, exactly. Like
she's lighting the way.
Yeah, with this.
That's interesting because obviously they filmed that not in the same shot as when she got it. So that had to be a choice to find the prop. Say either someone told her, "Hey, Carrie, this is hilarious," or Colleen Camp said, "Hey, where's my lot? I'd like to carry my lot."
Oh, it was very deliberate because so when they go up the main stairs to the landing, and then we see them kind of walk up like they're going to go up to the attic, and then they cut. We're like 4 weeks later and on a different sound stage. So the attic was shot on stage 17 at Paramount Backlot, and it was built there. So when they're standing down at the bottom there, that's weeks after they walked up those first stairs, and she still got the match. So it's clearly, awesome. It was very deliberate, kind of just simple gag.
Do you know, John, how much input the actors got to have in their characters, or was it very to the formula of the script? I mean, obviously we talk about the one improv that we know of being in the movie, but do you know if they had a lot of input on things such as that?
They had some input. They would just, Jonathan Lynn's big thing was don't ad lib, stick to the script. But if you have an idea, let's talk about it. And they would, they did different things like that. Colonel Mustard's line, when I lost my mommy and daddy, that was his idea. And he suggested that to Jonathan Lynn. When he pours the whiskey in the 3 glasses and just kind of moves around and does it, that was also Martin Mull's idea. But I think, the word ad lib gets thrown around a ton because I think fans love the idea of just kind of their favorite actors just kind of being goofy and showing up and just joking around and having a lot of fun. And that happens. There are some movies that plan for a lot of ad libbing, but Clue was not one of them. And it's actually, I think people don't understand. It's a lot harder to ad lib in a movie than you realize. There's coverage, right? There's blocking. You've got the lighting. Somebody can't just on inspiration march across a room or something. When he poured the whiskey, they had to get an insert shot of it and all that kind of stuff. Like, it takes time to figure that stuff out. So Clue there wasn't a lot of ad libbing, but the actors could talk to him and give ideas and suggestions, and he always listened.
Do you know?
Do you think some of that came out in rehearsal? Sorry,
that's what I was going to ask.
If they had rehearsal, because depending on which actor you talk to, they rehearsed a ton or they rehearsed none. But do you think? Because I think a lot of times that's what happens is when they're rehearsing and blocking and figuring out scenes, then those things happen, and then they add to the script. So it's technically not like what people think, like you were talking about. It's
right.
Not, Borat or Spinal Tap, where they're coming up with everything on the spot. But it's something that I'm sure Flames wasn't something that was said for the very first time. Camera roll. Hey, I'm going to try this and blow everyone's mind.
Yeah, it was and yes, they did have rehearsals. So that they did rehearse. They actually rehearsed for almost 2 weeks before they started shooting. And then they would rehearse before they shot a scene. They didn't necessarily rehearse for every scene, but for a lot of the scenes, especially with more than 2 characters in it, they would rehearse that because, again, that gets tricky with a lot of people and figuring out who's going to go where. So they would rehearse. And you are exactly right. Madeline Kahn ad-libbed the Flames line in rehearsal before they did it. And then they were going to do 2 takes with her just saying the line and with her doing Flames. She did Flames on the first take, and everybody just thought it was so funny that she did Flames on one more take, and they used the second take. So there are 2 takes of that. But that came because she did it in rehearsals. And again, the ad-libbing part, it was so funny that they then shot reaction shots of the other actors. And so that was something they needed to do, after she did that. But that all came from rehearsals.
So, and the reason, and Jeff, you actually asked what I was going to ask John about the rehearsals, because I remember Robert Zemeckis, director of Back to the Future, said about Christopher Lloyd specifically, he would always tell Chris Lloyd that the camera was running because he never knew exactly what Chris was going to give you in a particular take, because he wouldn't give you his full performance unless he knew this take could make it to the film. And I didn't know if there was any of that in Clue, to where Christopher Lloyd, they had any issues with the blocking of it. But you are right. I guess for a movie with this kind of dialogue, it prevents great ad-libbing because of the snappiness of it. Somebody says orange when they should have said banana, the other actor can be thrown rather easily.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the rapid fire dialogue, so the way it happened, they had a table read before they did rehearsals. And then they watched His Girl Friday. So Lynn screened it out for them so they could see kind of that old school rapid fire stuff. And then they went into rehearsals. But yeah, and that was a big thing with Lynn asking them not to ad-lib. He also worried about the mystery. He felt like, we can't have people ad-libbing because it might screw up the fact that we've got 4 different endings to worry about.
And did any of it have to do with him actually writing it too? Because, I've heard Quentin Tarantino talk about, I don't pay you to ad-lib, I pay you to say the words that I wrote for you. I don't know if that was in the Jonathan Lynn modus of operandi or anything of that nature.
I don't know for sure, but I just kind of doubt it. He just seems like such the opposite of like a stuck-up Hollywood artiste. Like he's just so. I think if an actor went to him and said, "Hey, how about this?" then he would, and he liked it better, he would do it. Yeah, he just didn't want to be surprised. I think he was under such. This is his first movie. He's directed the stage, but he's never filmed before. And so there's this steep learning curve. He has to learn about lighting. He has to learn about cameras, all of that stuff. Victor Kemper helped him a lot with that. He just didn't want to be surprised. So if someone suggested to him before, like, hey, what if we try this? He was all for that. And again, like there are the Martin Mull examples. I know there's a couple other examples that I have to think of where, they suggested something to him and he said, oh, okay. I still haven't figured out exactly why they did this, but the insert shot when Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet arrive, of him groping her, and then Wadsworth discovers them, that was filmed like 4 weeks later and wasn't in the script. So someone came up with that. And I don't know who. I haven't been able to find out if it was her, if it was Lynn, but they did that later because they felt like, oh, we need to show him being a creep here.
Yeah, maybe that was a Christopher Lloyd suggestion. I have an idea.
That's all he brought. That and the cook on the couch. All his suggestions were touching people's butts. John, I remember when we talked. Speaking of what actors bring to the, I just mowed right over that. When we talked so long ago about what actors brought to the movie, I remember you mentioning that in the script, or at least the early versions of the script, Mrs. Peacock was a much different character than the way Eileen Brennan played. She was much more like the proper, what you think of as a senator's wife in the 50s. And she kind of brought that frazzled, ditzy nature to it.
Yeah, she did. She was written as kind of this perpetually scandalized prude, and that was part of her hypocrisy. This is the challenge of Clue, right? These people suck. These people are like murderers.
That should be the poster tagline.
They're suck. Cheats. But like all of these actors made them funny. Maybe they didn't make them exactly likable, but they made them so memorable and funny. And I think the 3 that absolutely stand out are the women. I think Eileen Brennan, Madeline Kahn, and I don't know. If you'd have asked me like 10 years ago who your favorite actor or character was, I'd like Miss Scarlet probably would have been last, and now she's first. I think Leslie Ann Warren was amazing in that role. Scarlet was much more passive, and she did add stuff. She was supposed to be nervous when Professor Plum picked her up she just turned her into like this totally confident, like she's using him, right? And She did that throughout the movie. She didn't, she was much more timidly written. The dinner scene where Mr. Green spills his soup on her, she just kind of sits there while he mops her up in the script. But then she added the line, hey, watch it.
Watch it.
She was, I think those three women were just incredible in the way they turned these characters into such funny people that we could stand to watch over and over again. I mean, imagine watching, if Mrs. Peacock had been really just so unlikable, nobody would want to watch the movie over and over.
Absolutely. And I guess in some ways it's kind of like and this can be no surprise to our listeners, this comparison, it's kind of like the Seinfeld characters, right? Where we know none of them is individually very redeemable. They're all kind of like not great people, but we still like them. We still find ourselves rooting for them in some ways. No hugging, no learning philosophy. I also thought, and Jeff, I want to come to you as the filmmaker of this triumvirate here. I feel like this was some of the best tension made in the movie in this particular minute. The dark hallways, the silhouettes of Peacock and Plum, the long shot of Green and Yvette there with the score really setting in, the thunderclaps and lightning that we see in the in the windows there of the Hill House. Really thought this is the most mystery the movie has felt at this particular junction.
Yeah, this is the shadows and fog without the fog. Definitely. It's the thunderclap. It's the Mrs. Peacock silhouette when she's going down the basement. You can see her feathers, the Alfred Hitchcock silhouette moment. For sure. Yeah, this is no jokes in this minute. This is setting them up. Although we do get
Green and Yvette.
The one I mentioned last time, the fabulous non-breaking shot. I wonder how long, like audiences now, if this had been like an Apatow movie, if Clue was that, like how long do you think he'd hold them just standing looking up? You go on
another 7-8 seconds
forever, and the sound of the rain is what's good too. That's what keeps it, I think, funny, especially if you watch it with headphones on. Then you can just hear as they're standing staring up, just a it's like the ticking, like the 60 minutes intro of just how long are they going to stand there, and that's why it's so funny when they cut back to it and that they haven't moved.
They haven't moved
at all.
Well, I really feel, especially like as John was alluding to, this being Jonathan Lynn's first film, he directed for the screen. This was some of, I think, his best movie making, for lack of a better term, of really making that tension. You know what I mean, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He really, I get the impression he really liked filming in the upstairs. They were much more run down. When they get to the top of the landing, go back and look. The wallpaper's peeling. It looks like there's dust on the floor and on the railing. That was all deliberate, obviously. I mean, the set designer and the production designer wanted the downstairs to be really sumptuous and wanted the upstairs to be really spooky. And Jonathan Lynn's talked about how he filmed a lot more stuff upstairs that ended up getting cut. When you go back, especially in this first search of the house, when you actually watch it, you only get a few seconds of Mr. Green and Yvette looking around the attic. You only get a few seconds of Peacock and Plum in the basement or in the cellar, especially compared to how much time you see of Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet looking around. They filmed a lot more upstairs and downstairs scenes, but they ended up cutting them. And Jonathan Lynn really liked those. And he's talked about that he kind of regrets cutting it to tighten the movie. And, there were a lot of shadows. There were a lot of creepy shots. The room Mrs. White goes into is a nursery. And they had an establishing shot of that where they kind of pan across the room and you see children's toys and stuff. Without that establishing shot, it makes it kind of weird later when a Jack-in-the-Box pops out and you're like, what is going on, like in this room in Clue? But yeah, it was a kid's room, and they cut all of that.
Yeah, how much?
There is a weird when they.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry. I was just thinking as we were watching the shot of Yvette and Green looking up the stairs. There's a weird cat face on the right side of the screen that's carved into the stairs that's just staring at your soul, and I don't think I've noticed it before today, because I'm usually watching We bet. But I'm usually watching them at the bottom of the stairs. And on the right, there's, weird, just little, some of the production design is so funky. Like, it doesn't seem like it's deliberate, but obviously it was, because it's not a real house. So they brought everything in.
Yeah. How much, John, I was going to ask, how much was left on the cutting room floor from this movie that we maybe haven't addressed on this show before? I know, Jeff, we've talked about some things, especially the fourth ending, but was there other like small scenes that we just didn't get?
Yeah, there were a few. The one that comes to mind first for me, because it was not cheap to film. And I mean, the fourth ending was probably the biggest one, obviously. The fourth ending was the most complicated ending, took the longest to shoot. One of the scenes was actually them breaking out of the glass in the conservatory to chase after Wadsworth, and they did a 2-camera setup. They filmed it at a faster frame rate to make it look like it was slow motion. I mean, they went to a lot of trouble for that fourth ending to cut it. But another one was there was a scene filmed of the motorist driving to the house, and you see his car crash. They did like shots of Jeffrey Kramer in the car. They did insert shots of his foot hitting the brake, of his radio. He's listening to the McCarthy hearings on the radio as he's driving to kind of reinforce that. And then they had a cat run out into the middle of the road in the rain. And then I mean, at this point, we're talking about having an animal trainer there, right? And they had to do that for the dogs as well. And having this trained cat run out in the middle of the road. Then they had a stuffed cat that they put down for the final shot. And then they crashed his car. They filmed all of that and it was cut. I mean, that's not cheap, but yeah, they decided not to use it. I think they felt that cutting back and forth between that and the action at Hill House didn't really work. And so they cut it. Later, it worked better when the cop finds the motorist car. You know, you see them searching the house, and then you see the motorist or the cop finding the motorist car, and then they cut back and forth. That works really well. But I think they felt like the cutting back and forth to the motorist car crash between the action that and the action at the house wasn't really working. So they cut that whole scene.
Yeah, I actually, we did this thing on my Back to the Future podcast where we looked at all the deleted scenes and we said, was that a good cut or a bad cut? Should it have been in the movie? Should it not have been in the movie? Would it have made it more clear and understanding? I think that was a good cut. After hearing that and kind of visualizing it, I think that was probably the right call. Do you wish, both of you, we got the fourth ending in the movie? Jeff, start with you.
No, it's fine. I mean, even at the end of the documentary where I read it from the storybook, and it wasn't intentional. I do kind of make a face at the camera like, yeah, that's, we didn't need that. And then I didn't realize I'd done that. And as I'm editing myself, I go, ooh, what a jerk. I'll leave it at I am.
True.
Who's judging the Clue all of a sudden at the end? Sorry. Our email that we got last week that said, you seem to love everything. We don't. But no, I'm glad it wasn't, because it seemed, I think also because I just like Wadsworth. I didn't like him being evil. I don't even like him being the bad guy really necessarily in the last one. As a kid, I just remember Wadsworth. I liked him being the hero, and it was kind of bummed that he wasn't even the butler. It was all a lie.
All a lie.
Shucks.
What
yeah,
would they
that's
do?
True.
What do you think, John? Should they have had the fourth ending in there or no?
I'm so torn, because I'm I want to see it so badly. I'm just desperate to see it. But yeah, I think it was probably the right call. I actually, weirdly enough, I don't know why Jonathan Lynn changed it. In the first draft of the screenplay, Wadsworth, in the fourth ending, he's still the murderer, but he does it to take over Mr. Body's business, which I thought was way cooler than I'm crazy and need to be driven by perfection and was going to do the perfect murder. It made way more sense. He wasn't crazy in the first draft. He's just taking over Mr. Body's business, and he gets caught because in the first draft, he left the tape recorder on in the billiard room, and it records his confession. And then the police show up, and the final shot is the camera dollying in on the tape recorder that's still ticking away. I thought that would have been pretty cool, but the other one. But
Point of
the
order.
fourth ending, I mean, it has such cool stuff. They put Tim Curry on roller skates and had him roller skating through the mansion, to kind of show like sort of this silly but also hyper, action while he's running through, ripping the phone cords out and stuff. Yeah, he was actually, for not all the shots, but some of the shots, they put him on roller skates.
Well, let me ask you this then. If you put the fourth ending back but had to remove one of the endings that's in there, which one would you remove?
Jeff, coming from 3-point land with that question.
Man.
Whoa. Suddenly showed up for a podcast.
All right, I'm going to have a very controversial answer, and I'm going to say that I would remove the last one in the home video version. I would remove the one where they all did it.
They all did it?
Because that one, even though I know fans love that one the most, that one's the one that doesn't work. That's the one that, like, at least in terms of how plausible it is, it doesn't work as well. And I really, the others, I mean, the others have their issues, and I kind of go, one chapter in my book is we just go through each ending and see exactly how it was filmed and then how plausible it is. But yeah, that last ending, and kind of like you, Jeff, I don't know, like Wadsworth all of a sudden being Mr. Body,
Yeah.
It's a little far-fetched to me. I kind of want to know why his butler agreed to pretend to be Mr. Body, and we don't really get that answer or anything.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that answer.
I get it. It feels like we're doing this a lot this episode. There's too many people here. It does feel like, I think people like it because it is, everybody gets their time to shine, and it is the ending that has flames on the side of my face. But it does feel like, okay, this is the silly one for, like, those two kind of make sense. And now let's just do one just for the heck of it, which is why that would have been weird to see in the theater. If that's the only one you saw, you kind of be like, what? They all did it and he's bad. And I guess, okay. So I would have said before you answered Peacock ending would be my least favorite, but because it seems choppy. But you might be right. If we're getting that ending, I could see not needing. Oh, John, you made me think.
I agree. I think that not having the final ending in there, that third one where they all do it, I kind of like that one being removed. If we were to put the fourth one in, I don't mind it as much with it the way that it is, because I do like the sense of, yeah, we were right all along. All these people really are terrible. Like they weren't just fainting this terribleness. They all kind of got their comeuppance for their bad doing. Other obviously than Mr. Green, but the fourth ending, seeing Wadsworth on roller skates. Now I'm trying to figure out, is that the jumping of the shark, or is that in tune with the movie? It kind of seems out of place when you visualize it, right?
Yeah, it seems a little silly to me. It's kind of like the dog poop joke at the beginning. That feels out of place to me. And Jonathan Lynn has very, very clearly said that was not his idea. That was Dawn Steele's idea. She was the head of Paramount Motion Pictures. And he wasn't a big fan of that. But she suggested it, and so they did it. And then he filmed, over several days, everybody sniffing their feet. And he actually, in editing, he thought about taking it out, and he couldn't really see a way to edit it out. And yeah, the roller skates kind of feels that way a little bit too to me. That this is just, Clue's pretty witty. It's not. I mean, there's slapstick and farce, but yeah, the roller skates somehow seem a little apart from that to me, anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't know. It would been interesting. It would been.
But
I
want to see it.
I want to see it. Yeah, I want to see it to see if we're right. We could be way off, because the one thing that we should know from being fans of this movie for the entirety of the time that we have been is, thou shalt not doubt the talents of Tim Curry. And if anybody could pull it off, even the silliest of set pieces, it would be Mr. Tim Curry himself, Wadsworth. But I don't feel there's anything from this minute that we haven't covered. Jeff? No,
they walked around.
They walked around some more.
Quite well, considering that's what they did.
But I want to make
And
sure
next week they'll be walking around some more.
they'll be walking around some more. We're going to talk about a lot of walking. And it's Jeff, when we get to the end of this thing, there's a lot of credits that we're going to have to talk over. So you just get ready, man. Just figure out what we're going to do when we get to those minutes.
I'm exhausted.
But we want to make sure that everybody remembers What Do You Mean Murder? Clue in the Making of a Cult Classic is released November the 7th. The author, John Hatch, is here with us. And if you're in the New York area, John, if this is correct, on the 9th of November, 2 days after release, at Mysterious Bookshop, you'll be signing copies of the book.
That is correct. Be there.
Wow, look at that. So all you NYC fans, y'all get a treat. Y'all get a treat, Mr. John Hatch.
There are a lot of Clue NYC fans, so I can think of a few right now that I know that I met at Clue Trivia Night a couple of years ago that should be there soon, and they know who they are.
They know who they are. Well,
they know who they are.
All the Cluevians, we appreciate it. You can find more from John Hatch, especially about Clue, at Cluebook1 on Instagram is where you can find that. Cluedoc.com for Jeff's documentary. And my contribution to the Clueniverse is just this silly old podcast that I do with Jeff, but you can find me on all social media at Brad Gilmore. And then next week, we'll be back with minute 49. 49. We're over the halfway point of Clue, the movie podcast. We'll see you all there.